The crash of glass against tiles shattered the stillness, a jagged sound that echoed to the kitchen like a final verdict. David stood frozen, hand trembling around the crystal tumbler, amber whiskey spilling onto his shirt cuff. Across the counter, the divorce papers lay in disarray, pages half-curled and stained with the weight of marriage unraveling. The house, once filled with laughter and routine comfort, now felt like a mausoleum of memories, every corner whispering betrayal. 2 nights ago, Emily had stood exactly where he stood now, her arms folded as though holding herself together. "I'm going on a date, David," she had said, her voice disturbingly calm, the word date slipping from her lips like it meant nothing more than picking up dry cleaning. At first, he laughed, sharp, empty, bitter. "A date?" He repeated the word slowly, like it was foreign on his tongue. "With who? Or should I ask how many?" Emily didn't flinch. "His name is Eric. He's a colleague," she said, her tone maddeningly casual, as if she were discussing where to eat, not detonating 12 years of partnership. I need to feel alive again." Alive. That word had hit David like a punch to the ribs. What had the last 12 years been if not living? The shared mortgage, lazy Sunday mornings, their inside jokes over coffee in the sunlit kitchen. Wasn't that life? Or had it all been a slow suffocation Emily never bothered to mention? "You hear yourself, Emily?" he had asked, his voice low, tight with disbelief. "You're married. You stood in front of our families and promised me forever. Does that mean nothing now?" She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Her shrug was colder than any slap could have been. "I've given you everything, David. Maybe it's time I gave something to myself." He didn't argue. He didn't plead. Not because he agreed, but because he could see in her eyes that the bridge had already burned. All he gave her was a single, quiet warning. "Do what you want, Emily, but actions have consequences." The next morning, he woke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Cold, sharp resolve settled over him like armor. This wasn't just betrayal, it was war. And if Emily wanted to tear down the life they built together, he'd make sure she felt every brick fall. He started with precision. A fresh haircut, sharp lines replacing the shaggy neglect. He dressed in a tailored navy blazer instead of the tired polos he used to wear around the house. He detailed his old sedan until it gleamed in the driveway. He didn't just look like a new man. He was one. When Emily came downstairs dressed to impress in a black dress a size too tight and 3 inches too desperate, she paused at the sight of him. She was expecting a scene. A broken man. She got indifference. "Going somewhere?" David asked coolly as he pocketed his keys. His tone cut like glass. Her lips curled into a frown. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Exactly what I said," he replied with a smirk. "Enjoy your date. Just remember, actions have consequences." He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he drove to a quiet wine bar on the edge of town where Rachel, a co-worker he'd always respected, sat waiting. What had been an easy friendship was shifting. Pain had a way of clarifying things. Rachel greeted him with a warm smile that felt like sunlight cutting through a thunderstorm. "You look different," she said softly. "Different how?" he asked, settling across from her. She looked at him for a long moment. "Stronger." They ordered wine. They laughed. For the first time in weeks, David felt the coil of anger inside him loosen, if only slightly. But beneath the charm, a darker resolve remained. He wouldn't just move on. He'd make sure Emily understood the gravity of her choice. Later that night, Emily returned home to find David sitting in the dim living room, sipping scotch with surgical calm. "You're still up?" she asked warily. "How was your date?" His voice was ice. She hesitated. "David, I don't care," he cut in. "But you will." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you've made your choice, Emily," he said, rising slowly. "Now I'm making mine." The next morning, David was gone. In his place was a manila envelope and a note. Divorce papers. And 6 words. "Actions have consequences. Enjoy your freedom." But freedom wasn't what Emily found. David had already set the gears in motion. He met with Lucas, a ruthless attorney known for turning divorce into blood sport. David handed over a folder filled with bank statements, call logs, and damning photos. Evidence of Emily's infidelity collected by a discreet but efficient private investigator. Lucas raised an eyebrow as he flipped through the files. What's your end game? David didn't hesitate. I want her to understand what she destroyed, and I want her to feel it. Lucas smiled. Then we're not negotiating. We're dismantling. The fallout began swiftly. Emily was called into her office and informed that her extramarital relationship with a co-worker violated corporate policy. Terminated. Effective immediately. Humiliated and shell-shocked, she returned home only to find the locks changed. A neighbor handed her a small envelope. Inside, one key, a storage address, and a note in David's firm handwriting. This house is no longer yours. Friends grew scarce. Her bank accounts were frozen pending litigation. Eric, the man she'd gambled everything on, stopped answering her calls. David's investigator had made sure of that. Eric's employer received an anonymous tip, one that quickly cost him his job and reputation. His girlfriend left him. He moved away within the month, tailed by whispers and shame. Emily was left to pick up the splinters of a life she'd shattered. She took a part-time job at a diner. The kind of job where patrons whispered and pointed, where co-workers eyed her with thinly veiled judgment. The scandal clung to her like smoke. At night, she lay on a lumpy mattress in a one-bedroom rental, scrolling through old photos, birthdays, anniversaries, vacations. David smiling beside her, his eyes full of the love she'd never bothered to protect. The sobs came in waves. Regret tasted like metal in her mouth. Meanwhile, David rebuilt, slowly, methodically, like a man piecing together a better version of himself. He earned respect at work, grew closer to Ava, a loyal confidant who had stood by him through chaos. One night, over quiet dinner, Ava leaned in, her voice low and sincere. You're not just surviving, David. You're becoming someone stronger. He smiled faintly. She didn't just betray me. She woke me up. Eventually, that friendship deepened. Love grew from the ashes. Ava helped him heal, not with grand gestures, but with steady presence. For the first time in years, David felt peace. Not the numb kind he'd grown used to, but the kind that comes with clarity and earned happiness. On a brisk winter afternoon, he ran into Emily in a grocery store parking lot. Her car wouldn't start. Her hands were raw from cold. She looked up and saw him, clean-cut, confident, the very picture of a man who had moved on. David, she whispered, eyes welling. This is my life now. I deserve this, don't I? He stared at her, not with anger, but with an emotion more powerful, detachment. We all live with our choices, Emily, he said quietly. That's life. She cried then, openly, shamelessly. I'm sorry. I was blind, selfish. I don't even recognize who I became. David sighed. I hope you find a way forward. But us? That's over. You need to let it go. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the cold, finally facing the cost of her freedom. That night, he returned to the warm embrace of Claire, a woman who loved him with respect, patience, and a quiet strength Emily never understood. As they sat by the fire, her head resting on his shoulder, she whispered, You're a good man, David. And for the first time, he believed it.